velodrome, there's a cycling circuit here, archery fields, and the canoeing and rowing basin where today's rowing events take place for the Goodwill Games. You'll be watching the single scullers, the pairs without coxswain, the fours with coxswain, and the glamour event of rowing, the eights, in both the men's and women's events. I don't think you'll find any more superbly trained athletes than those in the rowing events. They're big people, they have great upper body strength, and of course with all the rowing machines in the homes around America now, you know what aerobic training can be for the rowing events. We're going out in the basin now, and we'll take our first look at action in rowing. We have perfect weather conditions as you're looking at the judges' boats here on the course. At the rowing venue, the temperature is about 80 degrees. I think the warmest day since we've been in Moscow. Very little breeze. And working with me will be Frank Coyle, who is the director of the United States Rowing Federation, former lightweight rowing coach at the University of Washington, and now a banker in Seattle. And Frank, I've talked to several of the United States officials. They think this is the best rowing course in the world.
Kurt, no question, this is a fantastic course right here in the floodplain off an offshoot of the Moscow River, and it's a fantastic day. It's probably going to warm up on us a little bit as we get down towards some of those events later in the day, but right now it's fantastic.
You've been all around. Have you ever seen a better designed course? They have a return channel, have a great sports medical center here, a housing for 400 boats. It is really outstanding.
It is. The stadium that we're looking at off to our left here that houses, will seat 3,400 people and is canted 8 degrees to the course, makes a magnificent viewing area for spectators as well. The scoreboards are state-of-the-art. This is a very unusual course for rowing, and it's certainly one of the best in the world.
And a little bit of history here today. The first time, this is really a dual meet between the United States and the Soviet Union. There'll be matching strokes, and the first time we've ever had a dual meet between these two countries in Russian waters. No other nations are competing. The rowing usually is a several-day event, but everything's been telescoped into a one-day, finals-only dual meet. And I think the Soviet coach, Antonelli Belinkov, put it pretty good. He said, for the spectators, it's good to enjoy everything in one day. This is the 4 oars with coxswain, the Soviets on the far lane in the lead in this dual meet.
We're in the last 250 meters here, Kurt. The U.S. team has come back slightly, but it's going to be decided here very shortly as we are in the last 250 meters of this race.
United States team trying to catch up. The Soviets staving them off. They're approaching the finish line with about 100 meters to go. Both Turner watching the race, the Turner Broadcasting System, the president. Here they are coming on, the crowd giving both crews a hand. And the Soviets hanging on 2/3 of the boat length. And if they win it by no more than the length of the bow of the boat, it's called a canvas or a deck. The Soviets in the far lane going for the finish line and are going to win the gold in the 4 oars with coxswain. They have defeated the United States. There's the red finish line, and this one is over with. Right now you're looking at the women's pairs without coxswain. Jennifer Scott, Pamela Knapp. Jennifer Scott, University of California, Berkeley, who majored in marine zoology there, is going for a master's degree in ocean engineering at the University of Washington. Pamela Knapp from Bellevue, Washington, are the American pair, and Marina Pagova and Galina Stepanova are the Soviet team. Here's the American team, and they're way behind unless they put on a miracle finish with about 250 meters to go now. The Soviets are going to win their second competition in a row. There's the Soviet team, and they're nearly 2 boat lengths ahead. And it looks like they're pulling away. Rowing easily.
They're rowing easily. That boat is well balanced. They're a match pair. They're apparently, from what I can see at this vantage point, not having to steer that boat a lot. The bow person in this boat will have a mechanism for steering, a foot pedal that connects to a rudder, and be steering that boat. But the appearance from here is that they're not having to use that too much. Just the balance and the power between the two of them is what they're relying on.
You mentioned a matched pair. They say it's hard to match up pairs in both men's and women, get the perfect pair to match up with each other.
Right, it's a question of strength and leverage and height, and they've got one there. They're rowing very well. But let's say that this American crew is very young. These people have not been together for a long time, not rowing together as much as the Russians have been, and this is just the beginning of their racing.
Sapanova rowed in the 1980 Olympics 6 years ago and was a member of the pair's 1983 World Championship team. And the crowd giving both the Soviets and the American pairs without ovations as they are going to the finish line. Soviets now about 50 meters from the finish line are going to win, and they're going to beat the Americans handily. Here are the Soviets, the winners of the pairs without. A very decisive victory for them. And the American pair, Jennifer Scott and Pamela Knapp. In the pairs without for women, the Soviet pair of Marina Pegova and Galina Stepanova are the winners, winning easily over Jennifer Scott and Pamela Knapp of the United States. So in the two races we've seen so far, the Soviet women are dominating.
Exclusive New England prep school and continued at Princeton University. She's been a member of the United States team for 9 years now, but Ann recently moved away from her traditional training ground. Here's our Goodwill profile.
I was 15. I started a private school in the United States called Phillips Exeter Academy, and rowing was one of the options for sports. And I took rowing in the spring because it was something out of doors. It was something, it seemed to me, less organized than, say, field hockey or soccer or something. So I thought, oh, well, I'll try rowing. It sounds kind of interesting and different. So I started sculling my second year at Princeton, and I just loved it. And I liked the individual part of it. I mean, to me, I think I'm at my happiest when I'm just out in my single rowing along by myself. I think it's terrific. That's Duncan. He's letting the dog out. The dog's name is Falcon, and he used to be a guard dog. But he's real friendly, and he's just getting to know me now. And when I lived in France, I didn't have any pets, so I like it here. But I like it in France, too. I had a great time there. We'll turn to gibberish. This is milk. You see, in England, the milk comes every day, and it's great. It's skim milk. And we don't have that in the United States. And this is Duncan, and he's the cook and the man of the house.
Yeah, and the coach.
And the coach. And I'm rowing in his boat.
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't have any accidents. So I guess I have a real international life because I lived a year and a half in France, and I'm now moving to the United Kingdom. Talking with the girlfriend of my coach last night in the car on the way from Vichy to Fontainebleau, saying how one of my big hobbies is looking at flight schedules and maps. I always have to find the shortest, cheapest, and most efficient way to get from A to Z. And I'm flying at odd times and strange places. I like music a lot. I like to listen, especially to classical music, but it has to be kind of impromptu. That's a musical term itself. Because when I was little, I had to play the violin, and I liked playing the violin, and I love listening to beautiful violin music, but I'm not somebody who can be forced to do things. And when somebody tried to force me to be an avid musician, it just didn't work. So I became an avid rower. And my father wanted me to go to one college, and I couldn't, just couldn't. I went to the other one. And my father wanted me to go to Harvard, so I went to Princeton. And so when my mom wanted me to play the violin, well, I found out that I wanted to row instead. The thing that I like is being in the midst of the fight and struggling to try and do something. And a lot of times things just stack up against you. But I never, well, I try not to give up, and usually I know that somehow, some way, no matter what happens, if my oars are broken or if the boat is terrible, something will happen and it'll come out right. And usually in the end, if you're determined, something will come out right in the end.
In a singular sport, a many-dimensional person, Ann Martin. Her dog's a bit of a ham, though, don't you think? Rowing competitions have taken her to Europe many times before, but this is Ann's first competition in the Soviet Union. She's anxious to compete against the Eastern Bloc athletes, and she'll get her chance very shortly. For more rowing, let's rejoin Kurt Gowdy now.
We're nearing the finish of the women's heavyweight single sculls. Ann Martin has been behind the entire race. The Soviet woman, Antonieva Dumsheva, got a big jump on her and is about 15 seconds ahead of her right now as they're coming down to the last 250 meters of the race. She's had a lot of international experience. Dumsheva, the national champ of the Soviet Union in 81 and 86, second in the quad, the 1985 World Championships, and the silver medalist winner in this event in the 1980 Moscow Olympic Games. A big lead for her, and it'll be a very decisive victory in the heavyweight single sculls for the Soviet Union. And the crowd applauding Antonieva Dumsheva.
She's picking up the stroke now. She moves into that final sprint, Kurt, and continuing to row as strongly as she has through the course of this race.
She's a powerful sculler.
Strong shoulders, using those legs very well as she comes into the finish line. She's a champion, and she's proving it there.
Now you'll see how far ahead she was. We're waiting for Ann Martin to come into view of the finish shot here by Soviet television. Ann Martin of Concord, still not in the picture yet, and should be arriving now. There she is, way out of it, but gave her best here in the women's heavyweight single sculls, won by the Soviets. And there's the champ, Antonieva Dumsheva, 28 years old. About 500 meters to go now in the lightweight women's single sculls. Angie Herron, 25 years old of the United States, has trailed the entire race, and now she has come on strong, as you can see, is drawing abreast of Tatiana Mironova, and is about ready to take a slight lead here, Frank. She's done quite a job.
She is, in fact. She has done a gallant job of bringing herself back into this boat race. She was down at one point a good length and a half, and slowly but surely has just driven back into this race, and right now she is moving out on the Soviets.
Lives in Hanover, New Hampshire. Angie Herron, the former gymnast. Husbands are coach. They're going to be moving to Madison, Wisconsin shortly, and now Angie Herron has taken the lead and is trying to get a boat-length lead on Tatiana Mironova.
Kurt, I think she has it. She is a length ahead at this moment and rowing very strongly. She has done a fantastic job in this race, and she is making her move now.
They're approaching 250 meters to go in this grueling single sculls women's race. And she is now over a boat length ahead of the Soviets.
She's rowing very well. She's a very well-conditioned young woman and just doing a fine job out there.
If she wins, it'll be the first women's victory in this dual meet between the Soviet Union and the United States. And now they're in front of the grandstand where a good crowd's on hand today, and the fans give them a hand. They like their rowing in this country, as throughout Europe. The World Championships will be in Nottingham, England next month. And here is Angie Herron coming on.
She has better than a boat length right now. She has about a boat and a half, if we can see it correctly here, and she is rowing very strongly.
Single sculler, Angie Herron, about a boat length ahead and more. And she is finishing very well. She now is about 100 meters from the finish line.
And maintaining that lead. She's doing a very good job.
The lightweight single sculls getting some cheers from Americans gathered here.
Kurt, Angie has now moved into her sprint and moving out, actually, on the Soviet at this point in time.
Well, she's in superb condition, isn't she?
She is, very definitely.
Here she is for the finish line. Angie Herron of Hanover, New Hampshire, is the winner of the women's lightweight single sculls, beating Tatiana Mironova of the Soviet Union. Great finish by Angie Herron. And boy, is she exhausted. She should be. mark of the quadruple sculls without coxswain for women. The Soviets are in the lead. We have just passed the 1,000-meter mark. The course is 2,000 meters long, and the Soviets stroked by Irina Shevsky in the lead. The Americans had pulled up almost even with the Soviets at about the 750-meter mark into the race, but the Soviets met the challenge and now have outdistanced them so far. And we're down now about 400 meters from the finish with the Soviets leading, and a good lead right now. They're coming up on the 250-meter mark to go. And again, Soviet television showing you in slow motion the synchronization of the rowers. 4 scullers in a single boat without coxswain.
Kurt, you have that American team making a move now. I don't know what it's going to happen, what it's going to do for them, but they are making a move. They've taken up the stroke and are trying to move back on that Russian crew.
I don't believe they can catch them, though, Frank. The Soviets well over a boat length ahead. 100 meters from the finish line for the Soviets. Here they are, driving for the finish. Coming on and getting some applause from the fans gathered here in the stands. There they are, about 50 meters from the finish, and the Americans will not be able to catch them. Soviets have picked that beat up and driving strong. Coming on about 20 yards from the finish. They're going to win it. Another gold medal. Here they are, the Soviets winning the quadruple sculls without coxswain for women. And the American team, stroked by Evelyn Hannum, crossing the finish line. Another gold medal for the Soviet women's team. The only women's gold medal winner, and the American flag being raised, was Annie Herron, and you saw her with her arm around her competitor Tatiana Mironova. John Strodbeck, Mike Tate of the United States, the twin brothers for the Soviet Union in the red, Yuri and Nikolai Pabinyov, the world champions in this event in 1985, also in 1982. The American team trying to pick up the beat. They're coming up to 500 meters to go, and they're going to have to put on a driving finish now to overtake the Soviets, who are boat length ahead.
They've just crossed that 500-meter mark, and as you say, the Soviet crew has a boat-length lead right at this time.
Well, the twin brothers are coming up on the 250 mark. We're looking at slow motion. He does look like Tom Selleck, doesn't he? Huh?
He certainly does.
Mike Tate. Strodbeck's on the left, Tate's on your right. That's the Soviet crew. And the Americans don't seem to be gaining much on them.
No, they're holding right about the same distance there. The Soviets holding that lead. It appears that that Soviet boat is just a little more stable, rowing from a little more level platform than the American crew. But they're coming down now very close to the 250-meter mark.
They're in front of the grandstand, getting some applause. Good crowd on hand, not only in the grandstand, but along the banks. The Soviets in the lead. They have dominated the racing, both of the women's and the men's so far. They're about 100 meters to go now, and the men's pair without. And the Americans trying to make a move on them. Can't quite nudge it up there, though.
They've jumped that rate, but it's not going to be enough. We're coming down. We've got 150 yards to go now, and that Soviet crew is holding that lead.
Here they are for the finish line. The Americans have moved up, advanced about half a boat length, but it won't be enough. And the Soviets are the winners in the men's pair without. Yuri and Nikolai Kamenyov, twin brothers, have won the event. They're supreme here in Europe and in the World Championships last year. Of course, they've had a little practice together. The men's heavyweight scull, the Soviet, is Vasily Yakusha. He was a silver medalist in the 1980 Olympics on this course here in Moscow. He was fourth in the 1985 World Championship. Closest to you in the blue with a white hat is Greg Springer. He is majoring in physics, a graduate course there, University of California. Big man, 6'5", 215. Yakusha weighs 205 pounds. He's 6'4". Greg Springer won the trials to qualify as the United States entry, not only here in the Goodwill Games, but also in the World Championships in Belgium, in Nottingham, England, next month. Nottingham. Robin Hood may be roaming around there, watching the races. He's ready, poised now. He wants to get a good start. Maybe, I don't know whether we have a false start here or not. They haven't recalled him. If not, Springer got a good start, Frank.
It appears we do have a fair start, and Springer did get an excellent jump out of the gun there. He was right away from that, and he seems to be moving now.
He was a silver medalist in the Olympics at Los Angeles, 1984, in the four-man crew with Coxon. That's the Soviet, Yakusha. He's in the lead. Springer just behind him. Right now, trailing by a boat length, 2,000 meters, a mile and a quarter, the men's heavyweight sculls. Yesterday, we had a chance to visit with some of the United States rowers, and we talked to Greg Springer, the sculler, about the difference in match racing, what he calls match racing, one against one, instead of being a member of a crew against crew. And here's what he had to say.
It's different. Match racing is a lot different than a six-man race. You know, a six-man, you let people chase rabbits. You sit, you run at your own pace, and like I said, it's totally different. In a one-on-one, you can really, it's possible to just dominate, just go right out and stay there. And if you're in better shape, if you're stronger, if you're better on that day, you got it.
500 meters left in the men's heavyweight sculls, and Vasily Yakusha, 28 years old, who lives in a village near Kiev, is ahead of Greg Springer, who you're looking at right now in the blue. Springer attending University of California, graduate course in physics, also coaching there. He won the United States trials to become the heavyweight sculler. In this event is the greatest in the history of the world, a Finn named Pertti Karppinen, who probably in Seoul will be going for his fourth gold medal in a row. Unheard of in sculling to last that long at the top. He's practically unbeatable and rather discouraging, Frank Coyle, to the other scullers of the world.
Yeah, he's a big one. He's the target they all shoot for, has commanded the single sculling event in most of the international competition in the last few years.
He won the world title. There is Greg Springer. Greg again is 6'5", 250-pounder. But right now he's trailing the 205-pound Vasily Yakusha, who is a fisherman and a chess player. As his hobbies?
Kurt, this singles event is tough to train for. You're all alone out there, and that goes not only in this race that you're witnessing now, but also in your training. There's nobody really to push you, nobody else to fall back on in that boat. It's just you out there alone. And sometimes out there in training, that gets pretty tough.
Soviet magazine on sculling and rowing. Greg Springer. We're down past the 250 mark. We have about 200 meters to go in the men's heavyweight sculling. And the Soviets in the lead, way in the lead. They have really dominated this dual meet here at the Kryslavskoye, where is the rowing venue, one of the finest rowing courses in the world, no doubt about it. In fact, the American officials here today say it's the best they've ever seen.
Greg has now jumped that rate of stroke, but it's going to be too little too late, Kurt. That Soviet sculler is moving on to that finish line, and we'll be crossing it here just very shortly.
There he is. He's the gold medal winner, Vasily Yakusha, 28-year-old Soviet from a village near Kiev. And Greg Springer, now approaching the finish line, has been defeated by Yakusha. Yakusha acts like he lost. He won going away, though. So the gold medal again goes to the Soviets in the men's heavyweight sculls.
New Hampshire, attended Exeter Academy, where his father is on the faculty, and went on to become a world-class rower under legendary Harvard coach Harry Parker. Andy Sudduth is a mainstay of the U.S. men's 8-oar squad, and here's our Goodwill profile.
My dad had rowed, so he sort of encouraged me to try it. There wasn't a lot of pressure, like from the time I was 5, you have to row, but it was mentioned as a possibility and as something that might be a fun sport to try. It hadn't been all that well coordinated before, so I wasn't a basketball or a hockey star at that point. Tried it and sort of enjoyed it. I mean, it was something, there wasn't as much magic in rowing as there is in other sports. I mean, skating or shooting a basketball is some skills that you sort of had it or you didn't. It wasn't something you could work on it a bit. But in rowing, basically the harder you work, the better you do.
The sculling is much different from sweeps in that you really are on your own. You have to be pretty resourceful and you have to be pretty highly motivated. And I think that's one of the other really big differences between rowing in the 8s and in the single. And Andy, I think, is finding that a bit harder this year. Oh, he could be the world champion, you know, if he continues to improve a little bit and stay at it. There's no reason that he shouldn't be the world champion somewhere along the way.
I never really had as much fun with anything else as computer programming. It's, especially when you get to start from scratch and someone hands you a job to be done. He says, okay, write a program that will do this. Whether it's figure out how to rearrange blocks on a table, or whether it's to preview laser printer output on the screen so you can save paper. And if you start from scratch, it's really fun because you start with nothing, you think up the structure, and then you get it to work. And at the end, you've come up with this working object that hopefully does something useful. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when I stop rowing, because rowing has taken up so much intensity. I mean, most of the intensity in my life has been directed towards rowing. I may go back to school. That's something I thought about seriously. Or go off and work. I mean, I haven't narrowed it down to any one specific field or job, but I probably want to find something that's challenging and fun and rewarding. You don't have to work too hard and gives me time for other parts of my life and sort of your basic ideal job.
All right, we have a start in the men's 8s. Andy Sudduth is stroking for the Americans. Kevin Still, number 7 oar. He was a member of the U.S. Olympic team that won the silver in Los Angeles. Ed Eyes, University of Washington, is number 6 oar. Tom Kiefer is a number 5 oar, graduate of Northeastern University, living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Dave Crumpich is number 4. John Terwilliger, who lives in Cincinnati, is in the number 3 position. Chris Penny, number 2. And Jonathan Kissick is in the bow. The coxswain is Jonathan Fish. And look at they're about even right now in the first 500 meters, Frank Coyle.
Yes, sir. The U.S. team came off the line right at a 44, jumped out slightly, and have been rowing very strongly here. Just at this moment, the Soviet crew is making a bid. They've upped their stroke about 2 beats, taking a power 10 or 20 there, and have moved out slightly. But it's still a boat race as these crews move down towards the 250-meter mark.
Yesterday, we had a chance to talk to Curtis Jordan, the 8 coach, and ask him what it would take for the Americans to win here against the Soviets.
I think the thing that we're looking at is the Russians have a very strong start. They really are very aggressive in the first part of the race. The United States team is very confident in what they can do in the last part of the race, but it's going to be very important for us to be with them and to compete against them and be aggressive with them in the first part. That's going to be hard for us to do, but that's what we're going to be testing ourselves.
We're approaching the halfway mark of the men's 8, and look at the closeness of this race. The Soviets are in the red on the far side. The Americans in the blue nearest you. Andrei Vasilyev of the Soviet Union is their stroke. He's from Leningrad, 24 years old. He presently serves in the Army, started rowing in 1976. He's a national champion for 3 years here, and this crew won the World Championship in the 8 in Belgium in 1985, and they may be favored again in the world. But the American men's crew, stroked by Andy Sudduth, who won a silver medal in the single sculls in the world last year, is stroking well and has the Americans in the lead right now, Frank Coyle. How about the beat? How about the catch?
The American crew is at about 35.5 strokes per minute, and they are moving at this point. This is between the 250 and 500 meter mark, and they're making a strong bid at this point. Rowing very well, very strongly.
The American crew in the lead in the 8, the glamour event of rowing.
Kurt, this boat comes from the U.S. selection camp in Cornell in Ithaca, New York. They were at that camp for about 2 weeks and now have been in Moscow for about 1 week. The final boat, what their goal is to go to the World Championships in Nottingham, England, August 16 to 23rd. And this boat is doing an excellent job here right now. They have made a strong bid. They're moving down into this course. Their beat is at a very strong 36. They still have a command over that Soviet crew at this point.
And we have about 300 meters to go in the men's 8. The Americans in the blue are leading the Soviets. The Soviets have won every event today, the women's and men's, except one, the women's lightweight sculling. And the Americans now in the big event, the men's 8, with 250 meters to go, are in the lead. And down below us, the other members of the American team are cheering them on. Now they're about a half a boat length ahead. The American men's 8, stroked by Andy Sudduth, graduate of Harvard College in '85 in computer science. Now they've increased the lead to a boat length as the American men are trying to flash toward that finish line. A boat length ahead of the Soviets, who were the favorites here today. The American men are about to score an upset.
And Kurt, they've moved into their final sprint. They're moving out now on that Soviet crew as they approach that finish line.
The American men are going to win the gold in the 8, and there they are, the winners. The American men's 8 crew has defeated the Soviets here in this dual meet.
Kurt, that crew went right off the line. They followed their strategy to a T. Between the 250 and 500 meter mark, they made a plunge right at that moment to take the lead. Were able to do that. Then again in the third 500, they moved out again and did an excellent job with that crew.
Frank, I understand this is history here, the first dual meet, Soviet waters, with the United States team participating, that you have been over here negotiating with the Soviets for a dual meet in Seattle next year, the opening of your yachting season between the Soviets and the University of Washington. Then the Huskies would come over here to the Soviet Union. Is that true?
That's correct. The University of Washington has extended an invitation to the Soviet Rowing Federation to send both a men and women's 8 to row in Seattle at the opening day regatta, which is the first Saturday in May, and this would be next year. The Soviets came back and expressed an interest in having a team from the University of Washington come the following year to Moscow and row in the Moscow regatta. Negotiations are in the process to work out the details, but it looks very positive at this point.
So we'll have the award ceremonies. A big win for the American men's 8. The Americans won only 2 gold medals today in the women's lightweight sculling event. Angie Herron winning that one. The Soviet women dominated every other event. And in the men's, the Soviets won every gold medal except the big one, which is the men's 8. And the traditional dunk for the coxswain, and that's Jonathan Fish, who's the coxswain of the men's winning 8 team. And he's delighted to take a swim in the Krylapskoye course here, which is formed by a weir off the Moscow River and is acclaimed as perhaps the finest rowing course in the world, with magnificent facilities all around it. Now some history is going to be set for the first time in the history of rowing. A combined crew of Soviets and Americans will row from the award platform back to the boathouse. And there's the Soviets getting in, and 4 Americans. This is history in rowing, and the story of what the Goodwill Games has tried to be about. We saw in figure skating that we covered the American world champion Debbie Thomas with Vladimir Putin, the famous Russian figure skater, doing a duet together at the end of the program. And here in rowing, 4 Soviets, 4 Americans, crawling, getting ready in the same boat to row away. A bit of history in the sport of rowing. The first real Boeing regatta was in Venice, in Italy, back in 1509. The sport moved along into England, where it became popular. In 1832, they started the Henley Regatta on the Thames River. When the settlers came to America, rowing was a big sport, and used to have crowds of 50 or 60,000. And there they are, rowing away. In the red, the 4 Soviets. In the blue, the 4 Americans on their way down the course. So that's the story from Krylapskoye here in the rowing venue at the Goodwill Games. 9 gold medals for the Soviet Union in the dual meet, 2 gold medals for the United States, and the last race of the day won by the Americans 8, upsetting the world champion Soviet 8 team. This is Kurt Gowdy thanking Frank Coyle, and that's the story in rowing.